Lord Krishna's birthday. A day for all of us to think about the purpose of the great avatar, to know something about the Saguna and Nirguna worship, and also how Papa, a Saguna devotee of Lord Krishna, became the Nirguna devotee of Krishna. So instead of taking our usual text of outpourings, we thought we would first concentrate upon these two aspects. And in our mind, everybody has got Krishna. That aspect we will try to reinforce. Everybody has Krishna. But still, when I say about Krishna, there is an avatar, there is a Jayanti, there is a dropping of the body, everything. In Sri Krishna Leela Vanamali brings out this, the birth of the unborn. We'll read a few portions. With the approach of the most auspicious time, when the star Rohini was in the ascendant, and all other stars and planets were in favorable position, Janardana, the Lord, who takes away the pangs of birth and death, the eternal, the immortal, the one without birth, chose to be born as the son of Devaki and Vasudeva. Peaceful silence reigned in all the quarters. The stars shone clear in the sky. The rivers flowed with pellucid waters. Ponds were full of lotus blooms. Woods were resonant with the chirping of the birds, the buzzing of bees clustering between the trees and creepers laden with flowers. Softly below the breeze, dust-free and fragrant, and gently glowed the fires in the sacrificial hearths of the holy. An ineffable peace stole into the minds of all men. The time was approaching midnight. Many jewels sprouted in the bowels of the earth. All the birds woke up, started crooning softly. The sun and moon both peeped out with their full complement of stars, among which the star Rohini was the brightest. This special conjunction of the 8th day moon with the constellation Rohini heralded the birth of the Lord. Muddy waters became clear. Springs gushed forth. Waves of the sea came rushing into the land to try to present themselves at the spot where the divine drama was about to commence. Little breeze carrying the sweet perfume of a million newly opened blossoms thrust their way in the dungeon and played with the curls around Devaki's head as she lay in labor. Noble people everywhere were wide awake, for they felt as if something momentous was about to take place. The wicked slept the sleep of the dead. In fact, Kamsa had never slept so soundly since the day of the prophecy. And as the guards, they were snoring so loudly that nothing short of an earthquake would have awakened them. The creator Brahma and the other celestials entered the labor room, hymned the Lord, and they could see shining within Devaki's womb. The sages and the gods showered flowers from above. The clouds rumbled gently in tune with the sea. At such a time, in the pitch darkness of midnight, Vishnu, the resident in the hearts of all, was born of the divinely beautiful Devaki. At the moment of his birth, the prison was filled with a soft light emanating from the baby himself. In that one brief instant, when she held him in her arms, Devaki forgot the ordeal of the morrow, forgot the cruel death that awaited her child, and knew only the bliss of the mother as she holds her newborn in her arms. Vasudeva was in terror. Vasudeva was in trance of delight, for he saw before him the divine form which had glowed in his heart 10 months ago, which had throbbed in Devaki's womb ever since. O lucky parents, what torture would one not go through to have a sight like this? Lotus-eyed, four-armed, sporting the conch, mace and other weapons, with the luminous Srivastava mark on the chest and the shining jewel Kaustubha on his chest, wearing a yellow garment, possessed of the majesty and grace of the rain cloud, locks gleaming with the luster of his diadem, earrings studded with precious gems, bedecked with splendid ornaments, such was the wondrous form of the divine child that appeared before them. Realizing the child to be none other than Hari, Supreme Being, Vasudeva prostrated himself before him and sang the hymn of praise. He gazed into those glorious eyes, which were overflowing with love, and felt such waves of bliss washing over him that he could no longer keep his balance. Again and again he prostrated before the vision, knowing him to be indeed that formless Brahman extolled in the Vedas, which had taken on the form of his son. Then Devaki exclaimed, "You are verily Vishnu, the light spiritual, the unmanifest, the vast, the luminous. I take shelter in you, the supreme shelter, that thou who bear the whole universe within yourself should have taken birth in a small womb is part of your divine Leela." Devaki says this, Lingam நிறைந்த பரபிரம்மம் அம்மா என்ற அழைக்க என்ன தவம் செய்தேனோ. Later on, thou who bear the whole universe within yourself should have taken birth in a small womb is part of your divine Leela, your incomprehensible play by which you beguile the entire creation. The Lord now spoke, "O great lady, having controlled your mind and meditated on me, in your 2 previous births, you had repeatedly asked for the boon that I might be born as your son. It is in fulfillment of this request that I am now taking my 3rd birth in your womb as your son. I have given you a vision of my divine form, so that you will recognize me, meditate on me, and therefore as the Supreme Spirit, and not merely as your son, and you will rise to higher states of consciousness and attain my state." Looking at his father, he continued, "Arise now, go to Gokula, to the house of the cowherd chief Nanda. His wife Yashoda had just given birth to a baby girl, who is none other than my Yogamaya. Leave me there, bring her back." So saying, he turned into a newborn infant once more, and the veil of Maya descended on his parents. Vasudeva was in a hurry to be off, but Devaki refused to be hurried. Who can blame her? Once having taken him in embrace, who is it that can bear to let him go? Happily he went to sleep in her arms, as she looked on entranced. Reluctantly she relinquished this bundle of bliss into the anxious arms of her husband, who had been waiting for an opportunity to hold him to his heart. He had forgotten to ask how a prisoner could walk out of a dungeon at midnight, go to Gokula, but as he rose up, he found that he was free. Wrapping the infant in his own upper garment, he held him tenderly to his heart, went toward the massive door of the prison, which was bolted and barred with iron. To his amazement, the bolts slid back, locks turned, chains fell softly, and the heavy doors swung outward of their own accord. Outside, the guards and soldiers slumbered heavily. No one woke, as Vasudeva with the baby Krishna nestling within his robes passed into the open. Here there was a heavy storm. The winds raged. His heart was heavy with foreboding as he listened to the sound of the gushing waters of the river, the Yamuna in the distance, and wondered how he would ever be able to ford it and reach the other bank on such a night. But lo, as he stepped out, not a drop of rain fell on his head, for it is said that Shesha, the celestial serpent on whom the Lord Vishnu is said to rest, followed him with his hoods upraised, acting as a gigantic umbrella over the divine child. From a distance he saw the Yamuna rising in turbulent flood, but as he came nearer, the waters parted so that he could walk across with only a trickle washing over his feet. The Yamuna wanted to have the honor of washing the blessed feet of him who was lucky enough to carry the Lord. At last Vasudeva came with his precious burden to the village of Gokula and to the dwelling place of Nanda. Softly the door of the farmhouse opened before him, and as he entered he saw a light burning within the doorway of the first room. The lamp stood by the bed of a sleeping mother and her newly born infant. Quietly Vasudeva bent down, exchanged the children. To the herdsman's life he gave the divine child, and from her side he took her little daughter. Once more he bent down, kissed that pearly forehead. Then, with a last lingering look at the baby's beloved face, he slowly backed out of the door. His sense of desolation after leaving the child was so great that he knew not where he went and cared less. Maya Devi, who lay in his arms, had to direct his footsteps so that he crossed the river once again, reached the dungeon in the city of Mathura, gave Yashoda's baby girl to his own wife Devaki. He returned to the pillar, found himself once more in chains. Doors of all the buildings remained bolted and barred as before. Hardly had he put the child on Devaki's lap than she began to squall at the top of his voice. The guard jumped up in haste, went running to Kamsa, carrying the news of Devaki's delivery. They had orders to wake him up, whatever hour or day or night the baby was born. Sword in hand, without his kingly ornament, he rushed to the dungeon with disheveled hair and crumbled clothes, his feet stumbling on the path. "Where is he?" he shouted. "Where is that puling, mewling baby? It is better to kill the cobras young in the nest before it can grow up and kill me." So saying, he snatched the child from his sister's arms. "But it's a girl," she moaned, "and deserves to be spared. Oh, brother, you have killed so many of my children, all brilliant like flames. Spare me at least this one, a daughter. Am I not your sister? The prophecy mentioned a boy, and this is a girl. What harm can she do to you? Return her to me, therefore, I beg of you." In spite of her appeals, Kamsa snatched the baby from her bosom and said, "It's some trick of Vishnu, the master of trickster. Girl or boy, what do I care? I will see her in hell first." So saying, he grasped the tiny feet, swung the baby around in order to dash her down on the rock already bathed with the blood of 6 other children. But as he lifted the child aloft, she slipped from his grasp, flew into the air, looked up in surprise. He saw the beauteous 8-handed form of the goddess, decked in celestial garlands and ornaments, armed with many weapons in each of her hands. She declared in a laughing, musical voice, "O fool, what use is it to kill me? Your killer has already been born. He lives within a radius of 10 miles. I have spared you today since you caught hold of my feet. Because of that I bless you, Kamsa, with the death at the hands of Lord Vishnu, the giver of eternal life." So saying, the Yogamaya of the Lord disappeared, manifested herself under different names in other parts of the world. Kamsa was sunk in gloom, decided to release his sister and her husband, and to beg their pardon for his atrocities. At daybreak, however, he sent for his evil counselors, who advised him to kill all the babies in the outlying districts as well as holy men, for Vishnu is said to hide in the hearts of the holy. Being thus advised by his vicious ministers, he sunk himself in the infernal crime of infanticide and harassment of the virtuous, and let loose a reign of terror unparalleled in the history of the world. The persecution of the virtuous leads to man's absolute ruin. It annihilates his longevity, good fortune, reputation, his prospects in the hereafter. Thus ends the 2nd chapter of Sri Krishna Leela, named The Birth of the Unborn. Now, in Papa's case also, initially Papa was also a Saguna Bhakta, and his deity was Lord Krishna. The vision he had, that he had beautifully brought it out. There was a vision. The boy Krishna was seen dancing, playing upon his flute. He was slender, blue in color, except a yellowish cloth worn round his waist. He was bare of clothing. On his neck was hanging a string of pearls. His head was adorned with a crown of gold, set with gems. His black curls of hair falling over his shoulders from beneath the crown. There were gold bracelets on his arms, gold belts set with gems around his upper arm. The fruit was of gold, and at both ends of it were hanging clusters of pearls strung on red silk thread. His ankles were adorned with bangles made of gold. His face, Sri Krishna's face, there was a heavenly glow upon it. The eyes, oh, the look of them was simply bewitching, enchanting. The lips, those sweet, charming lips were smiling. Oh, what a smile! A smile that can draw to him all the world. His cheeks, oh, how soft and radiant are those cheeks, the reflection of those enchanting eyes, and of the smile of those charming lips was dancing on these lovely cheeks. Those half-open, blood-red lips were revealing the finest set of milk-white teeth. Those beautiful ears were decked with rings and pendants set in diamonds, emeralds, and rubies. What a gait when Krishna dances! He is swimming in the air. Oh, the sweetness of the music that was coming out of the blessed flute. It sent thrills after thrills of unutterable bliss into the soul of the hearer. Altogether, he was a veritable personification of the most heavenly music. Ecstasy, bliss, and love seemed to have assumed human form. Ecstasy, bliss, and love seemed to have assumed human form. His well-shaped small feet were dancing, keeping time with the eternal music of his magic flute. Oh, what a sight! The very gods might envy such a sight. Glorious, glorious indeed is thy play, O Krishna. So we had some beautiful explanation about the Saguna aspect of the Lord Krishna. So before we move to our usual text, we thought it would be appropriate to go through the Saguna and Nirguna aspects. Because on the day of Krishnashtami, actually just like we used to celebrate Papa's Jayanti, we used to observe Papa's Samadhi. Pujya Swamiji once said, when he is eternal, how can we celebrate his Jayanti? How can we celebrate his Samadhi? It is the Samadhi of the body, Samadhi of the birth. It is the birth of the body and the Samadhi of the body. The eternal principle, it became more clear and conspicuous through that form. Though it is there in all of us, it is more clear, more conspicuous. So we celebrate that day as birthday or Jayanti day. So similarly, Krishna is residing in our heart. We all remember he says at the end of the first chapter, when he made Krishna his charioteer and entrusted to him the reins of his horses, he had got ready to give into his hands the reins of his mind also. Let us do likewise. Let us not think that unlike Arjuna, we do not have Krishna to guide us. Let us not get caught in the fallacy that Krishna was a historical person. Everybody has Krishna residing in his heart as the indwelling self. So Jayanti of Krishna reminds us of the Krishna in our heart. Everybody has Krishna residing in his heart as the indwelling self. He is nearer to us than the nearest. Let us bare our heart with all its impurities and weaknesses before him and say, O Lord, I take refuge in you. You are my sole guide, my master. Show me the right path. I shall follow it. If we do so, Arjuna's charioteer will be our charioteer too. We shall hear the Gita from his own lips and he will lead us to victory. So from the personal aspect, the Saguna aspect. Here there is a Saguna and Nirguna aspect now. And Vinobaji says a few words from Vinobaji. He asks, devotees ask him, some devotees worship you in Saguna form, while others worship you in Nirguna form. Whom do you like more? What answer could the Lord give? It is just like asking a mother having two sons, whom do you love more? The younger son is a little child, deeply attached to his mother. He is happy only in her company and is restive if she is out of sight even for a moment. He cannot bear separation from her. Without her, the world is like a big void for him. The elder son too is full of love for his mother. But he is grown up and mature. He can stay away from her. He serves her and takes all the burden and responsibility upon himself. Being absorbed in work, he can endure separation from her. He is admired by the world, and his reputation pleases his mother. If you tell his mother that she can have only one of these two sons, and she will have to choose between them, what could she do? How can she make a choice? Try to understand her plight. She will be totally nonplussed and may mumble, I can bear separation from the elder one if I cannot help it. The usual way of telling. It is more difficult for her to tear away from the younger son from her bosom. His special attachment to her will weigh with her, and she may reply accordingly. But it cannot be said to be the real answer to the question as to which of the two sons is dearer to her. She will reply if she must, but it would not be proper to take the word literally. The Lord has been put exactly in the same predicament. Arjuna asked the Lord, one of the two devotees loves you madly. His mind is riveted on you. His eyes long to see you. His ears are eager to hear you. Your praise. His hands yearn to serve and worship you. The other one is self-reliant. He has controlled his senses and is ever absorbed in working for the well-being of all. Engaged in selfless service of the society day and night, he does not even seem to remember you. He has realized oneness with the entire creation. Out of these two, whom do you love more? The Lord has replied exactly like that mother. He says, I love the former, the Sarvana Bhakta, and the latter too is mine. The Lord is clearly on the horns of dilemma. He has somehow given a reply, just for the sake of the reply. In the yoga of Sarvana Bhakti, all the organs can be directly employed. They could be either a help or a hindrance for both. Without Nirguna, Saguna is defective. In Nirguna, one remains within limits. To take an example, we establish institutions to undertake various kinds of service. Initially, an individual establishes an institution, but he is its main pillar. Everything revolves around him. But as the institution grows, it should not remain dependent on a single individual. It should then be guided by principles. Otherwise, decline is bound to set soon after the departure of that individual. To take my favorite illustration, one cannot continue spinning when the belt of the spinning wheel snaps, nor can then one wind up the yarn already spun. This is what happens to the institution when it loses the key person. It, as it were, becomes orphaned. This would not happen if the institution advances from devotedness to an individual to devotion to principles. Saguna needs help from Nirguna. One must eventually learn to free oneself from attachment to and preoccupation with individuals and outer forms. The Ganga emerges from the Himalayas. From the locks of Lord Shiva, she does not linger there. Leaving the support behind, she flows through the hills and forests to the plains that benefits the people. In the same way, an institution should be ready to adopt principles as its mainstay, and the eventuality of losing the support of the key individual. While constructing an arch, support is given to it, but the support has to be withdrawn later. If the arch remains firmly in the place after the support is removed, the support can be said to have done its work. Saguna is indeed the source of inspiration, but the ultimate culmination must be the Nirguna. In commitment to principles. And this is a beautiful word. He says, self-knowledge must ultimately emerge from the womb of devotion. The plant of bhakti must blossom into the flower of self-knowledge. Both should go hand in hand. There is a risk involved in the image worship. As long as it remains within the bounds set by Nirguna, it remains free from defects. As soon as it crosses these bounds, defects appear. This has happened in all religions. Saguna therein has degenerated in the absence of restraint from the Nirguna. Saguna is secure and easy, but needs Nirguna. Saguna should in fact grow, eventually blossom into Nirguna, into devotion to principles. Nirguna and Saguna are not opposed to each other. In fact, they are complementary. One must advance from Saguna to Nirguna, and Nirguna also needs the warmth of Saguna to remove subtle impurities from the mind. They thus enrich and gain luster from each other. Lastly, I want to say that it is not easy to clearly distinguish between Saguna and Nirguna. What appears Saguna from one angle may appear Nirguna from another. In Saguna worship, a stone image is looked upon as a symbol of God. But it is in the mother and in the saints that divine consciousness is clearly manifest. Wisdom, love, tenderness of affection are palpable in them. Still, they are not worshipped as the images of the Lord. Instead of serving the people full of consciousness, instead of seeing Saguna God in them, God is seen in an inanimate stone. To see God in a stone is in a sense the height of Nirguna. It is easier to see God in the saints, in the parents, in the neighbors who are seen to possess wisdom, love or altruism. It is far more difficult to see God in a stone. Still, we worship the stone image. Is it not verily the form of Nirguna worship? On the other hand, one feels that if God is not to be imagined in a stone, where else can we find Him? A stone is the most appropriate thing to become God's symbol, as it is unruffled, unmoved, peaceful, undisturbed under any condition. Our parents, neighbors, and the people in general, all these have their weaknesses. You are bound to find some weakness or fault in them, and serving them is in a sense more difficult than worshipping a stone. To sum up, Saguna and Nirguna are complementary to each other. Saguna is easier than Nirguna, but in another sense, Nirguna is easy, Saguna is difficult. Both lead us to the same end. So this is how the Saguna and Nirguna aspect is also touched. So on this auspicious day of the Krishnashtami, celebrated all over India and abroad by devotees of Krishna, we are reminded of these words. Krishna is in our heart. Krishna cannot separate me from Him. I cannot separate me from Krishna. Papa says in his outpouring, O Ramdas, you are in Ram and out of him. You are everywhere along with him. He is everywhere along with you. He cannot leave you. You cannot leave him. He is tied to you. You are tied to him. You are in his custody. He is in your custody. He cannot do without you. You cannot do without him. He lives in you. You live in him. Still, you are his slave. He is your protector. O Ram, thou art two, but thou art one. The lover and the loved in fast embrace become one. Two become one. One remains. Everlasting, infinite, eternal love. O love, O Ram, rave on. mind charged with the madness of Ram's. That is something to be pondered. Just now we heard, Krishna is in our heart. We are unable to feel the presence because we have not still handed over the reins of our mind. Mind means thought. When we hand over, when we hand over the reins of our mind to Him, meaning God remember it, then the outpouring becomes very, very clear. Instead of, "Oh Ramdas, you are in Ram or Krishna and out of Him. You are everywhere along with Him. Because He is seated within us. He is everywhere along with you. He cannot leave you. You cannot leave Him." Meaning, you remember when He was talking to Uddhava, when Uddhava was becoming restless. "Where will I find you? When you have departed from the mortal coils, O Lord, where will I find you? Where will I seek you?" The Holy One replied, "Go to my temples. I will be residing there. And if you are in any doubt as to where my temples are situated, I will tell you, my temples are in the hearts of my devotees." Therefore, go where my devotees congregate. Wherever you hear my name chanted and my stories recited, there will also I be. Therefore, seek me among my devotees, for through them I will ever manifest myself in this world. So the qualification is I should become his devotee. Then only I can become aware of his presence. I should qualify myself to become his devotee. By any means chalked out for us by him. Somebody could attain this universal vision through the farm also, many Bhakti-Uttamas. So that means they have done the pratishtha there, installation. We hear this. Mirabai's bhajan, any bhajan on Lord Krishna sends thrills, Many bhaktas have composed inspiring bhajans. In Tamil Nadu, Oothukadu, Vangarapur, we were yesterday sharing. Whenever we happen to meet Murugadas on those days in Madras, he will lose himself, in bhajan. So we used to tell him, he an exponent, the 4 bhajans which we hold very dear to heart of Lord Krishna. Adada Ashangada Vakana. Palvadiyum Mugam Ninaindan Manam Paravashamipamagudi. Alai Payude. Oru pullai puravi taravendu. Like that, the bhaktas are not content, in praising him. Why? Even a Nirguna Bhakta like Papa, we have gone through that, He was there for 15 days on the banks of Yamuna, enjoying the presence of Lord Krishna. So, the form is also enchanting. But at the same time, as Vinobaji warned, it should be within the limits. Meaning, it should have the Nirguna aspect also. That's what Papa, that Nirguna aspect is beautifully brought out here. O Ramdas, you are in Ram, out and out of him. You are everywhere along with him. He is everywhere along with you. He is tied to you. You are tied to him. You are in his custody. He is in your custody. We have heard many stories in Purana, episodes in Purana, where how the Lord becomes restless when the devotee is in trouble, when the devotee is praying. That's what he says. He cannot do without you, you cannot do without him. He lives in you, you live in him. Still you are his slave. He is your protector. O Ram, thou art two, thou art one. The lover and the loved in past appearance become one. Two become one. One remains everlasting, infinite, eternal love. O love, O Ram, rave on, mind charged with the madness of Ram's love. So here it is not coming in the name of, what you call meditation or contemplation. It is in the form of love. Because there it is capital F, self-reliance. They are relying on the nameless, formless. Here it is not like that. They are relying on the nameless, formless through the name and form. Papa's school of philosophy, if at all we can use that word, advocates purely on this aspect. Nameless, formless through names and forms. Instead of localizing, instead of limiting to a particular form, Papa wanted all of us to raise ourselves to all. Because right from the beginning, this was very clear to him about this broadening the vision, universalizing the vision. Because it was not centered on one particular form. That is the beauty of it. So on the Krishnashtami day, Papa is reminding us this also. You have Krishna in your heart, no doubt. And that Krishna concept came because of the name and form. No doubt about it. We are not belittling that. Otherwise, why should the name, how do we remember that name? We can't remember that name unless it has got a name and form. So here we find
the name itself is Ravana. Name itself is Ravana. Otherwise, there is no name,
Otherwise, why should there be a name?
Yes.
The very fact that there is name. So right from the beginning, right from the start of his spiritual journey, God made it clear to beloved Papa Swami Ramdas that he should aim at the universal vision and not merely be satisfied with seeing God in his personal form. Therefore, he should aim to see God as the universal or cosmic reality and behold the whole universe as his manifestation. It is then alone that one can feel the presence of God always, every moment of one's life. It is then alone that one can feel everywhere. This enables the aspirant to look upon all the forms, beings and creatures in the universe as the very expression or manifestation of God. This theme is beautifully brought out in the book In Quest of God. This is very important, On the auspicious day of Krishnashtami, he is reminding us. Yes, Papa, as if he comes and tells us, yes, Krishna was my chosen deity. I was enjoying When the bhajans were taking place in my brother's house, I used to go and not join. I would be simply in the realms, in the higher realms, floating. But later on, the same Krishna prompted him not to limit him to those. So when he came in the form, he had the boldness to say, I don't want this form. I want what you have explained in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Your Vishwarupa. So in the Bhagavad Gita, he brings it out. That from the form to the formless. No doubt, from the form to the formless. It is not from the formless to the formless. From the form to the formless. So, that is the peculiarity. That is why Papa was very particular that there need not be any idol worship inside the ashram. Not that he was against. He wants every one of us to move from the individual plane to the individual consciousness to the universal consciousness. So God is seated. Just now we read out, He is there. We cannot live without Him. You are everywhere along with Him. He is everywhere along with you. He cannot leave you. You cannot leave Him. He is tied to you. You are tied to Him. You are in His custody. He is in your custody. To recognize His existence and share with everybody, I am needed. No? That is the Bhakta says. I am the one who gives you the, authentication. No? That you are there. A Bhakta is needed to declare that there is Bhagavan. No? Think.
So even if the idol is installed, Bhaktas have to go there.
Otherwise, yeah, you are right. When a temple with all the usual protocol of paraphernalia, when the idol is installed, and if Bhaktas don't go there, so the relationship between Bhakta and Bhagavan is inseparable. The relationship between Bhakta and Bhagavan is inseparable. That is why Papa here brings out this. You are everywhere along with Him. He is everywhere along with you. He cannot leave you. You cannot leave Him. He is tied to you. You are tied to Him. You are in His custody. He is in your custody. He cannot do without you. You cannot do without Him. He lives in you. You live in Him. Still you are His slave. He is your protector. O Ram, thou art two, thou art one. When he says tied to you, we remember, in a Tamil song, such a one, when you was a child, Yashoda, when you are creating problem, he used to tie him to a vessel, what do you call it? When you do it? Oral. Something, no. There is a hand counting equipment. We call it a vessel. Very good. So there, he ties, I am tied to him, you are tied to me. So he allows himself to be tied. Ural katti, the pattern. Enna tavam cheyideno. Yashoda says, when you are creating problem, he made him to shift up, oh, keep quiet. Like this, I would change it. I made him to plead, Though he is the giver, ultimate giver. So he allows, when he says, I am tied to him, he is tied to you, you are tied to him. You are in his custody, he is in your custody. He cannot do without you. You cannot do without him. He lives in you. You live in him. Of all the outpourings, this particular one stands out. Because here, how inseparable is this Bhakta Bhagavan Devotee relationship. It is clearly brought out here. If we keep on going within and bring our Ishta also, we find the joy there. No? How close he is. He is in the very breath of our breath. Oh. But he makes me to forget him. Again, he gives occasions like this to remember him intensely. That is why satsang is, promoted everywhere. He makes us to be in the vyavahara for so many things. With the result, he makes us to forget him. But because of his love, he facilitates us. Occasions like this, important, we call it as important days. There is nothing like important days. Every day is an important day. But still we name it as an important day. So that we will intensely remember. Because he has made us to preoccupy ourselves with so many things in our mind. Every now and then, hey, look here, I am here, I am here, I am here. So through satsang, through important days, we call it as Jayanti day, we call it as Samadhi day, we call it as Sannyas day, We call it as Navaratri, we call it as Deepavali, so many. In different ways they have got different, somehow to bring in the God dimension. Who is in us, who is everywhere around us. It is not talking about something there. Ultimately now it has gone beyond the, as Vinobaji says, beyond the bound. So we are satisfied with certain rituals, having no deeper impact on ourselves. It is, Vinobaji, that word is beautiful. On this day we should all remember, Krishna is in our heart. That should be, we should keep on bringing that. What is now blocking us is, let us not think that unlike Arjuna, we do not have Krishna to guide us. Let us not caught in the fallacy that Krishna is a historical person. Everybody has Krishna. Residing in the heart, in his heart, as the indwelling self. Now the one which makes us to see these words, The one which makes us to feel that we are now in the satsang. The one which makes everyone to hear. That is the indwelling, presence of the indwelling self. And that is Krishna. Krishna residing in his heart as the indwelling self. He is nearer to us than the nearest. Let us bear our heart with all its impurities and weaknesses before him and say, O Lord, I take refuge in you. The heart's cry, and Papa's. I take refuge in you. You are my sole guide, my master. Show me the right path. I shall follow it. So when he cried, he heard from the great voice. Despair not, trust me. I shall liberate. So similarly, I take refuge in you. You are my soul. If we do so, like what Papa did. Arjuna's charioteer will be our charioteer too. Papa's Ram will be our Ram too. We shall hear the Gita from his own lips, and he will lead us to victory. We shall also be following. We shall also be always feeling the awareness of Ram within us. So today we have connected up both beautifully. The indwelling reality. Ram, the indwelling reality, who came in the form of Lord Krishna, and is still there in the same form in crores and crores of devotees all over. When we go to the Krishna temple, we don't see the idol there. All these things, come up well as never mind. But the problem is the moment we are away from the temple, we are satisfied. Because there we have to fill in Papa or these ideas. If we closely analyze, when we go to Krishna, when we hear the bhajan, Krishnani Begana Baro, when we hear that song, we all like it. But at the same time, immediately after the program is over, there is no Krishna, to be very frank. I am back to myself. So this lacuna, this has to be set right as devotees. So that is why they are bringing out all these dimensions on important days. And it is most fitting, this is the portion which we read out now in the cave, outpouring in the cave. It came today. It is the portion that has to be covered today. It was not planned. It was planned by him, no doubt. So the inseparable relationship between the indwelling self and me, the devotee. That is the message given to us on the auspicious day of Krishnastami day. So we pray to him, make me aware of yourself. Though you are giving me the power to remember you. Though you are, I am not aware, please make me aware. Now I understand, but then I forget. It is thy glory only. Because of that only I am in a position to remember you, to dwell on these thoughts. But immediately after the program, I am back to square one. Please, make me aware that the bond, the tie between the devotee and the Lord, me and you, should be kept alive, man. Maybe I am not mature enough. Maybe I have not trained my equipment to become receptive to this. Please help me to train, make it receptive. So with these words we prostrate before the form of Lord Krishna and also get ourselves connected to the formula of Krishna in all of us. Hayo. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram.